When a team of French archaeologists landed on the island of Cyprus in 2001, they quickly found that they were outnumbered. Despite having a population of about 1.2 million people, Cyprus turned out to have an even bigger population of cats. By some estimates, as many as 1.5 million felines, including both pets and feral cats, roam the country. You can find them practically everywhere. But Cyprus is an island in the Mediterranean. And if you've ever tried to give a cat a bath, you know that most of them aren't big fans of water. The closest mainland is Turkey, about 70 kilometers away. So how did all those cats get there? Well, those French archaeologists might have found the answer. While excavating a site of an ancient settlement, they discovered something quite surprising. It was the grave of a man who was buried alongside offerings of flint tools, seashells, and an 8-month-old cat. Dating to around 9,500 years ago, this burial represented some of the oldest known evidence of human-cat companionship anywhere in the world, predating the more well-known love of cats in ancient Egypt by 4,000 years. But when did this close relationship between humans and cats start? Who were the ancestors of domesticated cats? And how did humans help cats take over Cyprus, and eventually the world? For that, we can thank the complex process known as domestication. And yes, even though we let them poop inside our houses and knock stuff off our counters and pee in the laundry basket for some reason, we did domesticate them, even though it might not always feel like it. Today's domesticated cat is its own species, known as Felis catus. And we can trace its origins to a species of wild cats called Felis sylvestris, which is made up of 5 different subspecies. Based on studies of the genomes of modern house cats, one subspecies, called Felis sylvestris libica, is the direct ancestor of all domesticated cats today. And those wild cats, often referred to as African wild cats, can still be found across North Africa and Southwest Asia. And as you could tell, these ancestral cats don't look very different from their domesticated descendants. They're slightly larger, and they don't have the color variations in their coats that we see in house cats. Instead, they mostly have what are called mackerel tabby patterns, with stripes that run perpendicular to their spines. You can even find the same pattern in the cats depicted in ancient Egyptian artwork. Now, these wild kitties are solitary creatures. They don't have the same social structure that other animals like wolves do. So scientists think that the domestication of cats was probably a different process from the domestication of other animals. But unfortunately, the fossil record of African wild cats isn't great. Most haven't been preserved well enough to be used in genetic analysis, which is partly why it's been so hard to figure out how cat domestication actually worked. Some of the oldest known fossils include specimens from Cyprus that are about 11,000 years old, and others in Turkey from around 10,000 years ago. So how did we get from Felis sylvestris libica to Felis catus? Well, you know how hard it is to get cats to do stuff. It took a long time. And we still don't have the full picture, but the first step is understanding the different ways in which animals can be domesticated. A species is considered to be domesticated when it becomes genetically and permanently modified through human-influenced breeding. For thousands of years, they stayed close to human dwellings for food, but weren't necessarily close to the people themselves. But eventually, people noticed that cats were actually pretty good at catching the pests that were plaguing their food stores, and began to actively entice them to live in their settlements. And we can get glimpses into this process by studying the remains of ancient kitties. For example, isotopic analysis of cat remains from 5,600 years ago in northwestern China has revealed trace amounts of millet, a staple grain in the diet of the human villagers there. This suggests that cats were eating the mice that were feeding on stored millet, no doubt a useful service for the villagers. And the isotopic data from one cat revealed a diet that had less meat and more millet than expected, suggesting that it either scavenged from or was fed by the villagers. Aw. So what did domestication as a process do to change wild cats into house cats? Well, physically, domestication has made house cats smaller than their ancestors and resulted in new varieties in coat color and patterning. These included new variations of the tabby coat and the introduction of black, orange, and white colors. Most of these coat changes are fairly recent and came about as recessive genes in wildcats became more prominent. Then, by the 19th century, we think, people started to selectively breed for more variation in markings and colors. But beyond size and color, domestication didn't really change the morphology of cats that much, compared to, say, dogs, which have seen major changes in their whole bodies. This is mostly because of differences in breeding practices, as different dog breeds were bred for specific purposes. Modern cats also maintain more genetic and behavioral similarities with their wild ancestors than most other domesticated animals do, including behaviors related to eating and breeding. This is probably because of interbreeding between domesticated cats and surrounding wild cat populations. But the thing is, wild cats are actually thought to have been domesticated twice. Once in Southwest Asia about 10,000 years ago, and again in Egypt about 3,500 years ago. This is based on an analysis of the genome of modern cats, which suggests that 2 different source populations contributed to the current gene pool at 2 different times. And we've also found archaeological evidence that supports multiple points of domestication. For example, in Egypt, 6 burials have been uncovered at the site of Hierakonpolis, containing 2 adult cats and 4 kittens, and they date to between 3,600 and 3,800 years ago. Their smaller bones closely match the size of those in domesticated cats, and one cat's skeleton even showed healed fractures, suggesting that it was cared for by its human companions. After about 3,000 years ago in Egypt, we begin to see these relationships becoming closer through art and iconography that show cats alongside people. And from there, it looks like cats were brought to Rome by early Greek settlers, as well as through interactions between Rome and Egypt. As civilizations began to expand around 2,000 years ago, especially within the Roman Empire, cats followed as well. We know ancient Romans kept felines as pets based on artworks like mosaics that show cats in domestic settings, often hunting prey. Roman cats were most likely adopted into households to catch rodents and other pests, much like they did in the early stages of domestication. But none of this actually tells us where the story of cat domestication started. After all, if the oldest evidence of domestic cats is on the island of Cyprus, then who brought the cats to Cyprus in the first place? Well, all we know is that at some point during the early Holocene epoch, possibly 11,000 years ago, people from Southwest Asia began to migrate to Europe, including Cyprus. And they brought with them that subspecies of cat that was the ancestor of our domesticated cats. And cats being cats, we just ended up with millions of the little guys. In modern-day Cyprus, the cat population has boomed to the point of being considered an infestation. Cats are often seen as vermin, and there have been many attempts to try to get a handle on their growing population. Luckily for the feral cats, though, there are many sanctuaries run by volunteers who try to care for every stray. But it's not just on this island where cats have commanded such a presence. Our relationship has been mutually beneficial enough that domestic cats have truly taken over the world. Today, their estimated overall population is 600 million. Cats have achieved world domination. But if it wasn't for us, they might never have left Africa or Asia. We carried them to places they otherwise might never have seen. So maybe our pet cats should treat us with a little more respect? Mine could have started by not peeing on my laundry, but I loved them anyway.